solar setup consists of 4 100-watt solar panels, 3 200 amp hour lithium batteries, a 40 MPPT solar charge controller, a 3000 watt inverter, and those are the main components. The way I set up my system is it has the batteries connected in parallel in order to allow the system to remain 12 volt. So I first feed the system off the 12 volt, and I have things like my water pump, my 12 volt chargers, my max air fans that all run off the 12 volt system. But then I have the inverter, and the reason why I got the inverter was for two things. Number one, my work computer. I was working off of an iMac, a full iMac desktop in my van, and I needed inverted power in order to run it. The second reason was because I have a self-cleaning litter box, and the self-cleaning litter box makes an enormous difference on the day-to-day to prevent any smell with having two cats in the van. Those were really high priorities for me in the space. Number one, to make it comfortable for the cats, and also to make it comfortable for me, and because work was one of my top priorities. So when I was thinking about my electrical system, I looked up other creators to see if I could find anybody else that was running an iMac, and I did find, I believe they're called Let's Be Us, and they have two iMacs in their van. And so I took their system and I upgraded everything in order to make sure that I had above and beyond any amount of power that I would need in order to run my system. And so that's how I decided on my solar setup. It's more than I really need, but within that fact, I'm able to park in shaded areas or go without sun for an extended period of time before I need to plug in or choose an alternative source of power. On top of that, I have my alternator charger. I have an alternator charger. The alternator of the van batteries are hooked up to the house batteries via a battery isolator, the Cyrix battery isolator. Drop-in lithium Cyrix battery isolator. And that's how I connected my house batteries to my van battery to make it so that I would be able to charge the house batteries with the van battery when the van is running. As my third option, I made sure to include a shore power hookup. I have a converter, and it allows me to plug in at RV parks and still charge my batteries. When it comes to efficiency, you want to be able to use the power most directly. So the power coming from the inverter, the power charging from the converter, neither of those is very efficient. But the power coming from the solar panels into the batteries and turning into 12 volt power is the most efficient. And had I wanted to do a entirely efficient system, I would have only used 12 volt appliances, as that would have been the maximum efficiency for my system. But my reality didn't allow for that. I needed that computer, and I thought that the lifestyle would be much improved with the self-cleaning litter box, and I was right. So all of that's really confusing. There's a lot of different elements to it, and learning it was really tough. Doing my own electrical, number one, it ended up being easier than I thought it would be. Like, once I did it, it all made sense. The frustration that I had going in and the fear I had going in, it was very daunting. And so for people who are less inclined to DIY their electrical system, there are other options. For myself, I have this Bluetti, and it's a little dirty. I've been using it. Number one, it was gifted to me by Bluetti, so I could test it out and see how I liked it, and it turns out I really like it. And it even made me second guess, like, why did I go so far as to build my own system? Ultimately, I would have had to get a very expensive version of the Bluetti to support the system that I have and be comparable to the system I built. But if you want something a lot more straightforward, or if you have smaller power needs, like things like a laptop, just some small house lights, there's actually quite a few things you can run off of this. Something like this power bank, and another option is Jackery, can work really, really well. One of the things I like about it is it's pretty plug and play. A already pre-made power bank like this Bluetti can be really, really helpful. One example of something that can go wrong, because something actually did go wrong with my electrical system, was I plugged in a ceramic heater to my inverter. And I did this because my diesel heater had failed and it was getting into wintertime. This is at Thanksgiving. And so when I was at a friend's house, I plugged into shore power and then I plugged the ceramic heater to my inverter. That ended up overloading my system. It blew my fuses, and my fuses legitimately melted. And that was a really scary thing. Going into this and thinking, you know, I might have almost started a fire in my van. This is my house. This is where my pets are. I didn't want to deal with that kind of danger. And if you're looking for something where it's a lot more straightforward, you're not going to worry about knowing the fine-tuning of what you can plug into your system, what you can't plug into your system, what's going to blow your fuses, what's not. These are much more straightforward. They have a manual. You don't have to think about all of the intricacies of it. So that's why I like these as an option. But the reason why I have one is as a backup. So in that situation, I still had to work the next day. And so I had to either fix my electrical system in one day or find another place to plug in. I had to fix my electrical system in one day because I didn't have this. But if I had had this, I would have been able to work running off of this alternative power source. But this little Blue Eddy is special for a different reason. On New Year's Eve, I had had this for maybe a month, and I'd only used it sparingly. I've charged it to full capacity, and then I hadn't really used it a lot since. I'd plugged my phone into it at little campsites, but I hadn't plugged it in again. Like, I hadn't charged it again. And it's supposed to be able to charge your phone, like, I feel like 40 times is the capacity. And when on New Year's Eve, I got invited by a couple other Vanlifers to go hang out on the Dunedin Causeway near Tampa, Florida. And so we all collectively gathered around on that causeway, and we're all parked around in a little kind of semicircle. And we wanted to figure out what to do until New Year's Eve. And so somebody brought up, well, hey, I've got a projector. Can we set it up and watch a movie? And so people were wondering, you know, what are we going to charge the projector off of? And I already had this out just in case people wanted to charge their phones while we were all hanging out. And so I brought it over and they plugged in the projector, but then they needed the sound. So they hooked it up to one of those Bluetooth speakers. And the Bluetooth speaker lasted maybe half an hour, and then it started bleeping out saying it was low on battery. So they plugged the Bluetooth speaker into it. So it was the Bluetooth speaker and the projector, and then the laptop that the movie was running off of started to run out of battery, so we plugged the laptop into it. So it had a laptop, it had a projector, it had a Bluetooth speaker, and it had Christmas lights because I brought those out because I thought it would be fun for New Year's Eve, and it had Christmas lights plugged into it all at once. And we watched, what was the movie? It was Deadpool 2, I think. Yeah, we watched Deadpool 2, which is like a 3-hour movie, and this thing lasted through the entire thing and still didn't run out of juice. I still haven't charged it since then, and it's still able to plug my phone in and keep charging my phone. So they can go and go. You can figure out the capacity. They've got a few really helpful charts and stuff that'll help you figure out how often it needs charged, but it also has a little LCD screen that you can look at that tells you how charged it is. It can be charged 3 different ways. One way is with collapsible solar panels that they also sell. One of the ways is plugging it into standard house power, and one of the ways is plugging it into your 12-volt charger. So you can charge it any way that is convenient for you, and I think it takes off of the 12-volt charger. It took about 3 hours to fully charge, so it does take a little while, but once it's charged, you know, it goes and goes and goes. I'm probably going to plug it in tonight and make sure that it's all charged up in case any other emergencies pop up. And oh, and it also has a little wireless charger for your phone on the top of it, which is really helpful. So this is a fun little thing. I was really happy at the end of the New Year's thinking that, you know, I'm so glad I had it with me because it made that whole environment where we got to watch the movies together so much fun. And, you know, what would we have done if we didn't have it? So I love this little thing. I'm so glad I have it. And you know, in any future build, I'll either utilize something like this or just have it on hand as a backup. So those are some of the options that you have. When it comes to your power systems, it really depends on what you need to charge, what you need to run, and what's important to you. Rookie's making sounds in the background because I have her on a lead. This isn't a catch-all and it won't work for everything, but it will work for a lot of things, and for a lot of people's systems, something like this is just fine. When you're only running a few small things, you don't need one of those enormous systems with all the solar panels mounted on top. Ultimately, I'm glad I went with the solar system that I have. It works out really well for my needs, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind. But something like this is always an option, so just know you don't always have to learn electrical in order to do a van build. There's other options out there. If you're looking for the specific items that I'm using in my solar build or this product itself, you can look at my Amazon influencers page, which is linked in the description below. Thank you. Have a great day.